back. Our guest today, our regular panel, Zita Branstatter, Frontier subscription on the web. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
You look marvelous.
Thank
by the
you.
way.
Appreciate that.
Like that look. John Durkee, Public Radio Tulsa, at the far end. Johnny?
Hello.
Say it one time.
Do I look marvelous?
You look marvelous.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we've got Charlie Biggs with the Beacon. Charlie, we need to clear the air on something before we go any further. I know one of the distribution points, or some of the distribution points for your paper are no longer available.
Right.
Where can folks get their hands on the Beacon?
Well, the best thing to do is look at the website, tulsabeacon.com, because that lists all the sites, because it's not just one company, it's several different places.
Good, good. So go to the website of the Beacon.
Right, tulsabeacon.com.
Follow the map.
Did I say tulsabeacon.com? Okay.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Say it again, please. All right, first up, the Terrence Crutcher shooting. We know we have a man dead, a police officer that pulled the trigger. Everybody knows that. What we don't know is that little space of time, what truly happened. Now, that will come out ultimately. Meanwhile, while all this is happening in Tulsa, in Carolina, there are riots, there's damage, people are injured. Why didn't that happen in Tulsa?
Well, from the interviews I've done, I mean, I think the police department deserves credit for coming out very quickly with the video, very quickly, and all of the facts as much as they could. I mean, there's still more that I'd like them to release, and that they probably eventually will, but they were very transparent quickly. I also think Tulsa's just a different place than some of these other cities that have had problems. I think we have sort of, it's a smaller, there's not the big urban area to draw people. I also think it's sort of this good Midwestern kind of get along with your neighbors and try to get to solutions and not just scream and yell for the sake of it. I've heard some people wonder whether the legacy of the 1921 race riot somehow makes people less likely to start what could be perceived as violent protests. So I think it's a mixture of all that.
Well, I think the Tulsa County District Attorney, Steve Koenswaller, who kind of expedited the filing of the charges, I think that diffused a lot of problems there. Now, it may have caused him problems with the police department, but I think to the transparency that Zita talked about and the fact that the police officer was charged so quickly, it did not occur in Charlotte, which, by the way, it's not too much bigger than Tulsa, and my in-laws used to live there, but I think that's the transparency and those charges coming out so quickly made a difference.
I think part of it had to do with the way the city and the police department handled it. Mm-hmm. They brought in the family and a group of ministers and sat down and let them watch the video on the Sunday before it was released, so your community leaders were aware of what that video was going to show before. And I think some props have to go to Dewey Bartlett on this. I mean, on Sundays, he's usually in a North Tulsa church somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I think he had some credibility with that community.
So people paid attention.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next topic, we'll move on. The earthquake situation in Oklahoma. Boy, did we all get knocked out of bed. Well, not knocked out of bed, but we were rudely awakened, with the last one. All of a sudden up pops the state, well, I just don't know, and the feds come. We know, and what's going to happen is this. Has enough been done to cause them to taper off? Will we see, in your opinion, more problems?
I mean, from what I've heard is that it's quite possible that even if we back off entirely on injection, that we have reawakened very ancient old faults. That there's been 1 billion gallons of wastewater pumped into the earth into a very area that's fracture prone. So there's no guarantee of that. They shut down a bunch of wells right away, but then they reopened about half of them not long after that. So I think there's this syndrome where we say, oh, we're not having an earthquake, so let's start back up again. Well, but the stopping, is what maybe cause them to subside. And so I don't know. I don't think there's any guarantee.
Anybody else?
Well, I think I wish we knew what caused them for sure. It looks like these wells were a big player in the increased activity, but we don't really have an answer as to whether some of these might have occurred anyway. And earthquakes are impossible to predict too, so it's a very difficult problem. But one thing though, people ought to put riders in their home insurance because you look at what happened in Pawnee and the damage there, that people should insure themselves against future problems.
Take it back already?
Do what?
Take it back already?
No, I'm kind of on the same page with Ziva. I think we may have let the genie out of the bottle, and it's going to be hard to get it back in there. I thought it was so interesting that what was it, half of the wells they shut down, the state didn't have jurisdiction on because they were in Osage County.
That was a complicating factor.
Yeah, was that
That's when the feds had to step in.
Yeah.
in because the Corporation Commission doesn't have regulatory power on Indian land.
We also looked at how many times the insurance pays off on these claims, and it's very, very rare. It's what they say is, oh, well, your house is settling. So there's no guarantee that if you get that insurance, it's going to pay off on.
Would people be wise then, in addition to taking a policy, an earthquake policy, to question the companies before they take them? Because I know the insurance commissioner came out, what was it, 4 months ago, and said, look, if people are taking these policies out in good faith, you need to stand behind them.
Right, but what he also told me is that they're for catastrophic damage. They are to replace your house if it falls down. Okay, so it's not going to pay for the cracks in your walls and the doors that won't close and the incremental damage that is happening because of these sort of relatively low-level earthquakes.
About 10% of the companies too are saying, well, if these are man-made earthquakes, then we're not going to pay.
Right.
Yeah, it's not an act of God. It's a man-made earthquake.
It's going to be pretty hard to repair the damage unless your house falls
And I don't
down.
guess any of them pay for therapy, do they?
They need to.
Because the governor's decided not to call a special session to deal with what she calls the teachers' raises. So the $140 million in excess revenue that was slated now to be returned to state agencies, but there is rumbling and more rumbling that we may be facing yet another shortage before the first of the year. If that happens, state agencies such as, or groups such as education, the state prisons, state police, and on and on and on, are facing probably more belt tightening. What do you guys see coming?
Oh, I think we're going to have additional problems. The price, the state budget is based on $40 a barrel oil, and it gets up to about 45, and then it falls back to 39, and then claws its way back. You know, the state's not bringing in the money it should.
Well, John, just today, the day we're taping this, which is what, the 29th, it was announced that the Mideastern oil companies, or the Saudis, I should say, OPEC got together and they've decided to limit now their output, which will have a dual effect. One, it's going to turn off the spigot a little bit, which will help raise the price of oil and gas here. But at the same time, it's going to do very little to help producers or families that are trying to get somewhere. I mean, this is a bad situation we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Equalization Board, I think, is going to indicate that there's going to be a major shortfall again in this next budget year. And there's a glut of oil out there right now. And there's a lag time, too. Even though OPEC might say we're going to stop pumping so much oil, there's going to be a while before it would translate into more exploration in Oklahoma.
I saw a great story from Reuters not too long ago looking at our state's dependence on the oil industry and sort of all the breaks that we've given them, and it compared us to another Midwestern state that was doing just fine even with the same oil prices. I think we just need to maybe diversify our tax base a little bit so that we're not so dependent on the whims of the oil industry.
Well, we've talked about that since Raymond Gary was governor.
That goes back a long way.
It takes some courage.
You know, we talk about it every time there's a bust, but we never do anything.
True.
Well, Don't expect a miracle. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, I want to talk about the fact that the folks in Oklahoma City are saying no tax increase, yet they're allowing fees to be raised right and left. And some of the bills that are going to be on the ballot when we go to the polls in November. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.